Okay.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I will call to order this March 28th meeting of the Tompkins County Council of Governments. We have what I think will be a fairly robust agenda, so we'll try to move things along. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add or change in the agenda?
Just the thing about that I heard that I emailed everyone about last night with the municipal broadband goings on in the assembly. So we could just put that whenever we talk about broadband anyhow.
Okay.
Thanks.
And I was
Yeah,
going to
Robert.
raise a question about CHIPS funding in the state budget for a discussion of that.
Okay. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add to the agenda?
Where are these things being added?
That's a great question. CHIPS we'll discuss under transportation. The broadband, I think we'll just add before we get, we'll add at the end of the committee reports. Probably
Okay.
the easiest place for it.
Mhm.
Anything else?
I'll have a separate broadband item too. It'll be brief, but if we do it at the same time or whatever you think.
Okay. All right, very good. We have minutes from our January 25th meeting to approve. If someone would like to move those.
I'll move them.
Thank you, Robert. Do we have a second? Brittany, you take your pick.
Jason, I saw Jason's hand first.
Okay. Any comments, questions, or discussions on the minutes? Hearing no comments, questions, or discussion, all in favor of approving the January 25th, 2024 minutes as presented, please say aye or raise your hand.
All right.
Aye.
Aye.
Those without their cameras on, could you please identify as well?
Do we have any opposed?
Newfield abstaining.
No opposed and one abstention. Okay. Report from county administration is next. Lisa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, not to preempt, I know you guys are going to be talking about broadband. I just have a very quick update on behalf of the county, and I believe you've all received a recommendation or an invitation rather from Nick Helmholt this afternoon that there will be an update and a recommendation coming forth to the April 3rd Housing and Economic Development Committee meeting of the legislature at 3 p.m. A recommendation regarding the RFP for broadband expansion for underserved parts of the county. So that was just an FYI on that. In administration over the next month or so, we will be busy preparing for the 2025 budget retreat with legislators. That will be at the end of April, April 30th. And then I was going to be making the announcement that we have a meeting planned for April 11th at 4:30 that you all have been invited to, a Zoom meeting to continue the discussion on cost sharing for the Rapid Medical Response Program. I want to acknowledge there is a resolution on today's TCOG agenda. And I'm torn between a couple of meetings this afternoon, so I'm going to try to stick around and hear that discussion, but I may not be able to remain on at that time. So I just I know that that's an item on today's discussion, and I look forward to hearing further how that goes. So I think that's it for me.
Thank you, Lisa. Anybody have any questions for Lisa? Must be almost spring break. All right, thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.
Next we have a report from, is Jay here? Scroll my screen. There's Jay. Jay Franklin from Tompkins County Assessment. It's all yours, Jay.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Sorry, I'm not in chambers. I had to head out so I could get to my next engagement at 4:30 here. So I do have a quick presentation. I watched the January committee meeting, and I heard you wanted an assessment 101. I think you need to give yourselves a little more credit of knowing what assessment 101 is already. So we're going to bump you all the way up to 301. So let me try to share my screen. And hopefully everybody can see that. Can you? Oh, there we go.
Not yet.
Looks like we're getting there better. There we go. All right. Oh boy. All right.
That's
I
better.
start off I should say I can't see everybody on the screen, so if you have a question, feel free to interrupt me. I'd rather not listen to myself talk constantly, so feel free to do that. But I like to start off all my presentations with, does anyone know where this is?
Looks like, is that Newman?
That's the Newman Municipal Golf Course. Does anyone know who the commissioner of the LPGA is right now?
I feel like I
Probably
should,
a lot of
Jay.
golfers, but it's Molly Marcoux, who grew up playing golf right there on the city golf course. I just thought that was very interesting, along with myself too. I was stuck there as a kid and had a lot of great time golfing with all my adopted grandparents. So Jake, Peter, wherever you are, thank you for the sodas at the turn. He used to bet on me out driving people, so I always got a free soda. Quick little agenda here. I'll just go over kind of the job of the assessor and the real property tax director. We're unique here in Tompkins County. I'm the assessor for the county, but I also do the duties of the real property tax director. We'll talk about a couple different assessment cycles because I know there's questions about what a triannual cycle is and what a true 3-year assessment cycle would be. We'll talk about some tax definitions. We'll talk about tax levy changes, and then the results of this 2024 annual equity maintenance program that we have. So who is the assessor? The assessor is just a government official who estimates the value of real property within a county, city, town, or village boundaries. This is then converted to a taxable assessment when we were take into account any exemptions that you would offer or the state mandates that we offer. And then that's just one component that goes into somebody's tax bill. Typically, most assessors here in New York State are appointed for a 6-year cycle. They try to do it longer than what a town board term limit is to allow some political independence. But I am a civil servant. I was appointed as such, so I'm not subject to that 6-year reappointment. Oddly enough, there's still some 3-person elected board of assessors out there. And there's also some villages that serve as the assessor for that village as well. I don't quite understand that, but that's one of the things that's still allowed here in New York State. You know, what's the difference between a property assessor and a tax assessor? One, there is no tax assessor in New York State. That's just not within any of the terminology. In fact, one of the opinions of counsel from the State Board of Equalization and Assessment, the assessor is not involved in the levy, extension, collection, or enforcement of local real property taxes. Now, I realize other states in our great nation here have different rules for assessors. I think in Michigan or Ohio, you'll pay 2% of your property's value in taxes each year. So that's not something that tax rate doesn't deviate. So then that assessor is really kind of like a tax assessor, because the value really does determine what taxes are collected by the taxing jurisdictions and paid by the property owner. So here's kind of our big section. Whatever I do is governed by the New York State real property tax law. It's a law, it's not a suggestion. So here's our big section, section 305. All real property in each assessing unit shall be assessed at a uniform percentage of value, fractional assessment. So each and every year we have to adjust values to make sure that everybody is at the same percentage of their market value. Now, we've chosen 100% here in Tompkins County since 1999. We had a 2-year triennial cycle, and we unanimously went back to 100%. And the reason, it's just transparency. When you look at your assessment, could you sell your property for that? You don't have to say, all right, well, we're at a 42% level of assessment. I got to take my assessment, divide by 42%, come out with a figure. We could be like Nassau County and value at 0.1% of value. So if your house was worth $300,000, you'd have a $300 assessment. I don't know why you'd want to do that other than confusion. A key here with the real property tax, it's an ad valorem tax. It's, Latin for according to value. Who owns a piece of property or what their income is, that doesn't affect the value of the real estate. I think that's really a key. You can get into whether the property tax is more progressive or regressive than the income tax. I think it's more progressive. But, we have to deal with what the laws say. And I don't really think it's it's counterproductive to really talk about the merits of the property tax now. We can do that at a later date, but for now, we just got to work within the system that we have. And I like to say the property tax is the tax of last resort. But when you're developing your budgets, you take your state aid, your federal aid, all of the extra money that you're going to get in through fines, fees, whatever you charge for services. And that last bit, the last chance for you to raise revenue is through that property tax. What are some of the duties that we have? As I said, I'm the assessor and the real property tax director. One of the big duties we do is actually review, approve, deny the real property tax exemptions. A few years ago, the State Assessors Association did a study, and exemptions take up 52% of an assessor's job. I have Tammy Van Orman, so I have my 52% right there. Tammy's amazing. We maintain ownership records of all property and record deed information. People like to think that we're the authority on who owns property or what boundaries are, but we're just reflecting the best information we have. The only one that can determine who owns a piece of property or what boundaries are the courts. So obviously we try not to cause that conflict because we like to keep our data up to date. But we're still only as good as the information we have available. We collect physical inventory about the property. According to the county charter, all towns have to give us building permits at least once a month. So I really appreciate all of you, all of your code offices that do that. We'll still work on the city of Ithaca. We haven't gotten a building permit from them for the last 6 months as they deal through their technical issues. So hopefully they'll learn from the town of Ithaca. Rod, thank you. Ruth, thank you as well, and Lansing for giving us open access to your OpenGov program. We estimate the market value. We help with closings and divvying up taxes through the certificates and memorandums of apportionment. One thing I do a lot is public relations as well. It seems like that's all I do is talk. I don't get to do any of the fun work anymore. This is my third presentation this week. I was at the Lansing Board of Education, the Landlords Association, and now here with y'all. Typically that's what the assessor does. Now the real property tax director will update those tax maps. They'll print tax rolls, bills. And then another thing that they should be doing is coordinating with you all whenever there's a change in real property tax legislation. I don't see a whole lot going on right now at the state level, but probably in July and August, I'll be back to you with a potential to increase your low-income senior disability exemptions, and also take a look at the alternative veterans exemption scale again, just to try to keep that on your forefront. Again, one thing with exemptions, I don't advocate for or against them. All exemptions are bad because they deviate from the ad valorem basis of the tax. But as soon as you adopt them, they become good. Those are ones that I go ahead and administer. So we're more than happy to administer them at whichever level you want to pass them at. With 9 towns, 1 city, 6 villages, 15 school districts that tax within the county, we can juggle different scales. We value property here for real property tax purposes. One key here is we have to do it on a yearly basis, or else inequity is going to creep in. And I got a good quote here. The combination of infrequent reassessment with rate shifts increases the property tax burden away from those properties who have been appreciating onto those whose values have been declining. So we want to make sure that people aren't paying more than their fair share or paying less than their fair share. We just want to make sure everybody pays according to what portion their value is over that whole tax base. Not every residential property appreciates and depreciates at the same rate. I'll get into that a little bit. And definitely not the same as commercial properties. Sadly enough, there's municipalities in New York State that haven't done a revaluation since the Civil War. I don't know how their assessment roll is equitable, but that's what it is. And, with this, property has unfortunately been a leader for the systemic racism within our county and our nation. When you talk about redlining, talk about putting roads directly through neighborhoods. If you've driven down I-95, you look to your left and you look to your right and you're like, wait a minute, these houses are exactly the same. What was here before 1995 or before I-95 went in? Same with Route 81. And, it's happened here. For a deed in the city of Ithaca, one of the deed restrictions said house shall not be sold to a racist and derogatory term towards African Americans or undesirable foreigners, and shall be used for a private residence. This was included in a deed in 1946. At one point, they removed a deed restriction about a garage being on this property. But this provision they still felt was needed at that time. There was now a recent court case that just came out of New York City, and how just poor and discriminatory their tax assessment process is. They're much more complicated, different classes of properties, but this Court of Appeals decision that just came out, I think, is going to change how assessments are done in New York State. We'll see what comes out of it. New York State doesn't derive any money from the property tax. So I don't know how diligent they're going to be, but hopefully we get some more standardization and some more enforcement. There we go. So I want to talk about a couple different cycles that are possible. We have an annual reassessment program and a triannual reassessment program. They're not different by any stretch of the means. The only difference is in the interim years, you don't keep everyone at 100%, but you keep everybody at a uniform percentage of value. I always said I could cut everyone's assessment in half. It's not going to change a single tax bill. All it's going to do is get confusing. Tax rates are going to double, but as long as everyone's at that uniform percentage of value, whether they're at 1%, 50%, or 100%, their tax bill will be the same. So in an annual, we stay at 100, and a triannual is just in that third year, you go back to 100%. We tried that in 2006 and 7. And I'll show you a chart of how tax levies were increasing so significantly back then, and the county legislature wanted to do something. A lot of new legislators were coming in. We tried triennial. I spent more time trying to explain triennial to the public, and they kept saying we were not being transparent and hiding assessment increases. Because when you do that, if you're at 100% and your assessment's at 100,000 and you drop to 90%, you've increased the market value of that $100,000 house to $111,111. You take 100,000, divide by 0.9, and that's where you come out with that new market value. So changing your level of assessment is a way to change everyone's market value and not really notifying them directly. But I know when people talk about a triennial cycle, this is really what they're talking about, a true triennial cycle. New York State has no mandated reassessment cycle. You can do it every year, or you can do it every 250 years. There's no mandated level of assessment. We're one of 3 states, I believe, that don't have a consistent mandated level of assessment within our nation. New York State has no enforcement mechanism to ensure compliance. There's different statistical measurements that you can take and industry guidelines. And when a municipality falls out of that, New York State can't do anything about it. But unfortunately, a true triennial cycle isn't allowable under New York State's current real property tax law. So how this should work is, this year for 2024, we did a revaluation. Our valuation date is July 1 of 2023. Now, for our next 2 assessment roll years, we should value everything as of that date. If we kept moving the valuation date upwards to July 1, 24 or 25, different properties are going to appreciate differently in those years. So in the first 2 years, we just pick up new construction, we value back to those dates. It gives us a couple years of knowing what we need to do for the next revaluation. So in the first year, we would value vacant farm and commercial. The next year, we value residential and the rest of commercial until we get to that next 2027 assessment roll, which is based upon the value as of July 1 of 2026. This would be great. And I'll go through some pros and cons here. Obviously, annual is the most equitable way to distribute the tax burden. You're going to get smaller assessment changes each year than if you wait for multiple years. We can respond to changes in the real estate market more quickly as properties become more desirable and less. There's cons to this, though. We see it in property owner fatigue and also department fatigue. I got my 3rd year of an assessment increase. Yes, we know that the market here is crazy. Also department fatigue, because we know regardless of any change we make, we know some property owners are going to come in and talk to us. So we know we're going to have to deal with the same ones over and over again, the same complaints that we've heard for the last 3 years. I have one property owner that we must have spent 40 hours with her each year when she comes in to contest her properties in the city and in the town of Ulysses. We just know that, and it's a burden. And another one major thing here is it's hard for me to plan. I don't quite know where the real estate market's going. I don't know the people I need. I can't just add appraisers to my staff. So it's very hard to know what our work is going to be for this year. Triennial, we're going to stop seeing those increases every year. but you're going to get a bigger impact in year 3. You know, I say it's a shell game. It's not transparent. We can change one figure, that level of assessment, and change everyone's market value. And again, this is hard for us to plan because we don't know what changes we're going to have to make to keep that uniform percentage of value. The true cycle, the nice thing about this is the public's really aware of the year that they're going to get an assessment change based upon market conditions. It's easier for me because I know exactly what we need to do each year. And, you know, it also provides us a year of kind of cleanup work. After we did that reval, we can sit back and say, all right, this is a cleanup project we need to do rather than trying to fit it in. But unfortunately, this isn't allowed by current law. A couple definitions here, so we're all on the same page and who's responsible for them. The tax base, that's the total assessed value of real property minus any exemptions. That's what I do, what my office does. We determine value. The budget, you all know this, you know, the overall revenue and expenses for a taxing jurisdiction. It's either voted on by the governing board or a vote of the residents of that school district. So May 21st is our school district budget vote. Hopefully we get more than 10% of the registered voters voting in it. I don't care if you vote yes, vote no, vote just for the Board of Education, just vote. Voting is one of our biggest things we can do as residents to express what we're feeling there. So vote. Tax levy. The amount of money needed to be raised after all of those other sources of revenue. Again, that's the taxing jurisdiction. You know, we determine the market value, you determine the cost for the level of services that you want to provide to your constituents, and then math just creates a tax rate. You know, when I hear discussions about the tax rate, that's really hiding the tax levy, in my opinion. So it's more truthful, more transparent to say this is how much more money we're spending. You know, when we say we're going to freeze tax rate increases, then you kind of get into a hidden tax levy increase scenario. So here's just a very theoretical solution. Any likeness to any school district or town in our county is purely coincidental. So we have a tax base of about $6.6 billion. If they needed to raise $107 million, we can come out with a tax rate of $16.22. Now, if their tax base grew to $7.5 million because property got more valuable, in order to generate that same $107 million tax levy, the tax rate could drop to $14.33 per thousand. However, if you're going to pause any tax rate decreases, like say you've decreased your tax rate 6 out of the last 8 years, but now this year you're going to pause them, you're going to generate $122 million now, or an increase of 13.2%, or, you know, $14 million more in levy. So it's not, you know, we're going to keep the tax rate the same. That's not really that transparent and truthful. And it's very misleading when this happens. And then the onus is then put onto my office for raising taxes. You know, we don't raise taxes, we raise assessments. But hopefully we can kind of get this kind of miscommunication out of our dialogues here. So here's a chart of tax levy increases and why we went to a triennial cycle in the previous years. You know, in 2003 to 2006, the tax base was growing, you know, before we got to the 2008 mortgage crisis. So we see a lot of huge tax levy increases here over that time period. But the two columns in blue is when we went to an 85% level of assessment, or a 90% level of assessment for 2007, and 85 for the 2008. And then we jumped back to 100%. So we got about a 16, 17% increase in the tax base then for the 2009 levy. Now, I didn't do any statistical tests, but it sure looks like as the tax base was increasing, the levies were also increasing as well before we went to a triennial cycle. Now, the last 5 years, you can see the tax base growth for all of our towns in the county combined. And the tax levy growth more or less mirrored the tax base growth. 2002 was a 1 year kind of after COVID hit. We weren't quite sure where the market was going. The market really wasn't open yet. We didn't have a lot of tax base growth, and then the tax levy growth didn't happen as well. As the market started kicking in, we're starting to see more tax levy growth corresponding with the tax base growth. And there are increased costs. I just hope that the increase in the tax base isn't being reflective and being hidden in a tax levy growth as well. You know, when I see a 2% cut in tax rates, it's really a 10% increase in spending. Sorry, I see David popped up.
Hi, just very quick question looking at the slide in front of us, and I should start and just say thank you. This has been a great presentation so far. But is that a typo at the top line? Are those also supposed to be like 2016, 2017?
No, I
We
wanted
just had
to
a
go
gap in.
back. I wanted to go back to show, because in 2007 and 8, we were at a 90% level of assessment and an 85. So in the past, this was the reason why the county legislature decided to go to a triennial cycle. They wanted to try to stop the tax increases from happening. And sorry, I don't want to call out the town of Ithaca here, but you know, a 22.9% increase, a 32.5%, and then when we didn't increase assessments, a 2% and a 1.4% increase. But then when we had a 17% increase in the tax base, when we went from an 85% level of assessment to 100, right back to a 17.6% tax levy increase. So
I just want to note it was before I was on the town board.
Yes. So it's just one of those, maybe there's other reasons, but you know, a growth in the tax base doesn't equate to a growth in the tax levy. Because properties are worth more doesn't mean the services that you provided to them are correspondingly increasing as well. So getting into our annual equity maintenance program, you know, why we did it. So every year I take a look at our assessments and how they compare to our sale prices. So I took a look at our 2023 assessment roll compared to how properties were selling. And that mean and median ratio was 83 and 81%. So we're down 17, 20% on average compared to what properties are selling for. Now we take a look at the price related differential. That measures our vertical equity on the assessment roll. So it ensures that we are assessing higher price properties at the same level of assessment than we're doing lower price properties. It's a tendency of assessment and appraisal in general to have a hard time hitting those outlier values. You know, it's hard to hit the $2 million property and it's hard to hit the $30,000 property. You kind of average things out. We don't average them, but average meaning you're trying to go to the middle. An acceptable ratio for that's between 0.98 and 1.03. So our vertical equity on the roll is pretty good. We measure the coefficient of dispersion. That measures our horizontal equity, making sure that all of our assessments are consistent. So on average, we're off about 11% from that 81 level of assessment we had there. industry standards for us would be about 15% is an acceptable level. You know, I think one thing people try to make us out as being not good, but their measurements that they're trying to grade us on are just unreliable, or, you know, we're never going to hit them. You know, I had someone, you know, how could you raise me up $80,000 to $450,000? I just had an appraisal done and it came in at $440,000. $10,000 off on a $450,000 house is incredible. And us, in order to try to measure a real estate market like we have today, that values the emotional appealness of a house more than the objective variables. You know, this job right now is so much harder because more things that we can't measure are going into a sale. You know, we can measure the square feet, the condition, the beds, the baths, the land size, but that getting down to really what a property is going to sell for, it's that art and a science. So this year, the last 2 years, we went out and trended parcels and just applied a consistent increase to a certain market area. That makes our overall numbers look good, but unfortunately, with 36,000 parcels in the county, it's not going to make everything look good. Last year, I could have sworn I saw the market decreasing, and I think we hedged our bets as the market was going to turn around. Interest rates were 7. At some point, this has to stop, but unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, it hasn't stopped yet. So this year we did a parcel by parcel review. As soon as June 22nd hit, I put 2 appraisers in a car and said, don't come back until you value 75 parcels today, and we'll see you in December. It was actually really nice in my office when everyone was gone, nice and quiet. I got a lot of work done. But it is a burden being out there for that long. If you spend 7 hours in a car and you go 30 miles, it's not comfortable. Luckily, we have a lot nicer cars when I did it back in 99, though. One thing I do have to say is thank you to our apartment owners. We sent out income and expense questionnaires to them. The last time we did it, we had 13 returned out of about 1,000. This year, we had 227. You know, we spent a lot of time with the apartment owners, building up that relationship, letting, you know, they understand what we're trying to do, and now they're willing to work with us before. I think in the past, they just said, you show us our values, we'll go from there. And then after we get all of our values in there, I do a multiple regression analysis. I create a model, reapply that to our subjects, and then we take a look at those properties that didn't act uniformly. You know, we wanted to make a look at, you know, why is the model predicting that this should be $200,000 less? And then we go and look at that property and we take into account outbuildings, garages, things that just are hard to bring into that regression model and aren't typical. So we wanted to make sure that after we went out in the field, we were uniform. So here's the results of our reassessment. You know, we have about 35,000 parcels in the county. I think 300 and some odd were reduced in value. Typically, those would be splits, demolitions, fire, things like that. 12,200 parcels didn't change. We didn't look at vacant land this year and a lot of other commercial properties. But then you look at the assessment changes. So there was 23,600 changes, I think 23,300 increases. Some pretty significantly, greater than 25% was 7,277. But here's that tax impact of what those changes were. Yeah, so 18,274 parcels would see a tax decrease when we reapportion the prior year tax levies. The impact notice that you all got isn't trying to predict what your taxes will be. I don't know what the changes in the tax levy will be. It's just reapportioning the prior year's tax levies. So if we didn't do what we did this year, 18,274 parcels would have been paying more than their fair share dictates according to the property tax. 4,000 didn't change, and only, a little bit more than half of those changes in assessment are going to see a tax reapportioned increase. And only 6,635 will see a tax increase of 10% or greater over last year's. And I think that's it. Hopefully I didn't go too long. I don't have the clock there, so any questions?
Questions or comments for Jay? Yeah, Linda.
So I'm bothered by the fact that you spend so much time on what people's taxes are going to be, when I think all you should be doing is the assessments and let the municipalities figure out for themselves exactly what they want to do. But the other thing that worries me, what I have been getting from feedback is that there does not seem to be much rationality in the assessed values in Cuba Heights. It boggles my mind that you can go 1 year and the assessed value of a fairly large, expensive property goes up 100%. That does not compute to me. And the other thing is, I've got a lot of people have been talking to me about their assessments, and I just don't see any rhyme or reason in how they seem to have been done.
I don't know how to convince you that there is a rhyme and a reason. We have 2 appraisers out in the car. We have historical information about that property. We have that inventory about the property. We know about sales. This year, I moved 1 appraiser to just verify our sales so that we know when a property sells, we know what sold. We know any circumstances behind that sale, so that when we're using that sale to value compared to other properties, we're comparing apples to apples. And Cuba Heights really has seen a rebirth. Cuba Heights 2 years ago, we didn't trend, but the emotional appealness that comes into play now more than we've ever seen is bringing back Cuba Heights. Back in '96, when Kendall was built and the high-end subdivisions were built in Lansing, we saw an exodus of Cuba Heights. But now people want to go back to those unique houses and the unique settings there. And I don't see the inconsistency. There is going to be inconsistency on the amount of changes that people saw based upon where they're at. Everyone becomes a mathematician now. My assessment went up 34.62%, but my neighbor went up 31.1242%.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about somebody going up 10% and the one down the block goes up 45%.
Yeah, we don't look at the percentage increase. We look at, is that 2024 market value reflective of what they could sell your property for? We've trended the last 2 years, and we know that that is not equitable individually. It's equitably as a whole. But this year we went and looked at every parcel individually. And the funny thing about this is when we trend parcels, people say, oh, you can't just apply the same percentage increase to all assessments within that category. We'd say, all right, we agree with you. But when we go out and we reappraise properties individually, we get the complaint of, I went up more than everybody else. We don't try to look at what the percentage increase is that 2024 assessment reflective of the market value of your property? Right now, we're going through our informal assessment review meetings. We're tracking, I think, about 8% of the changes that are coming in. So it's not I don't believe our numbers to be out of line. There are instances on where typically I find condition. We get building permits for when a property improves in value, but we don't get it when it deteriorates. And that's where I'm finding most of where our assessments are wrong. But this is that time that we need the public's help. You know, if we wanted to do fee appraisals on everybody, Lisa, if you're still here, I need $18 million added to my $1 million budget. So thanks, Lisa. But, you know, by industry standards, we are really, really good. We can be better, but only marginally better. It's just the nature of the business. You know, not every property owner is going to let us know. Our former governor lied to his assessor about his basement being finished, or sorry, his girlfriend's basement being finished. You know, I've seen just this year someone copy and paste an appraisal with different values and different signatures on there. So, you know, we're also wading through the nuances of that. Could we be better? Yes. Are we good by industry standards now? Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments for Jay?
Well, yeah, I've got one.
Yeah, go
Not
right
so
ahead.
much, not so much a question as a comment. You know, I appreciate the part of the notification that tells people what your taxes, whether your taxes would have been more or less, based on the reval, compared to last year. Because people see, people say, my assessment's up 20%, or my assessment's up 30%. Yeah, well, look at what would your taxes have been? If we didn't change the levy, would you be paying more or would you be paying less? Because that's it gets around the misconception that the rate is connected to the increase in valuation. It's all in the levy, and that part of the notification is very helpful.
Thanks. And the only time we do that is when we make a whole lot of changes that would really reapportion those taxes. And we've only done it the last 3 years. Typically, when we're making, 5,000-6,000 changes like we did normally, we would only put that change in assessment. But here we really need to show how those taxes would have been reapportioned. Because, you could look at it and say, I see a 13% increase in my assessment, but your proportionate share went down. Another way to look at an assessment is take your assessment, your taxable value, and divide by the overall taxable value of that municipality. And then multiply that times the tax levy. That will get your tax bill. Last year I was responsible for 0.02114% of the $22 million tax levy for the Lansing School District. You take my $251,000 assessment divided by the $1.2 million tax base, and that's how you get my proportionate share. So showing that impact notice really shows how your proportionate share of the tax levy changes.
Yep.
Great. Any other? We do have
See you,
a lot of
David.
items remaining on the agenda, but I don't want to leave anyone out. If there is a specific question you have for Jay.
Sorry, I don't have a specific question. I just wanted to make one more comment because I heard what Linda and Joel said. And in Bell Sherman, I just wanted to say, like, we haven't, at least that I've heard of, there has been a lot of inconsistencies about neighbor to neighbor about the assessments. But I just want to reaffirm that point that we should be talking about the levies and not the percentages, because my neighbors that live across the street from me in the town of Ithaca, their assessment went up at the same levels of mine, but the town levy didn't raise their taxes. So their actually tax bill went down, even though their assessment went up, just because they live next door to me. But because I'm in the city of Ithaca, and it looks like our levy, especially looking at that chart, like it just goes up and up every year. It's my tax bill that keeps hitting. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here, so maybe I'm just kind of trying to have a sidebar with Pierre in public. But it's this levy that just people need to be paying attention to and not just get fooled into the numbers of the percentage that you're paying. Thank you.
Yeah, Robert.
Yes, I appreciate Jay's justification of the annual reassessment of property. It does make the most logical sense. The problem is it ignores human nature, and that is the human nature of the political class. Because there is this tendency, and I'll use an example because it's been on the public record, the Ithaca City School District, at the school board, that the school superintendent has said, I'm going to keep the tax rate stable for the next 3 years. And school board members mentioned, yeah, that's because there are cranes in the sky. And that means there is all this new construction. What it fails to take into consideration is the fact that assessments are going up for individual residential properties. And so what it allows is it allows a lot of mischief to be made by the political class. And if it were to go to a triennial cycle, there would be less opportunity for mischief because those assessments would not raise every year to allow the tax rate to stay constant and allow the taxing authorities to hide the true increase in the cost of their government and the true burden on the taxpayer.
Bob, thank you. I really appreciate that. That's something that I've struggled with. Because for assessments, the most transparent way, the most fair is to do it 100%. But we realize there are some unintended consequences that happen sometimes. But, you know, it's hard to know whether it's the best to change our system or it's best to educate school boards, town boards that may not be aware. You know, I've had it in the past where town board members have asked me, how did our levy increase X? And I don't know that. I don't vote on the levy. I wasn't there. I read all of your minutes. I do have no life, so I do read all of your town board minutes and planning board minutes. And if I can't tell from there, it's tough. So there is that, but I appreciate you speaking out about that.
I commend Tompkins County because they focus on the tax levy every year, and they are very, very insistent on that. And we in Enfield, focus on the tax levy. But I know there are taxing jurisdictions that don't, and that's where I, as a council member, start getting the pushback from the community.
Yeah, and that's why there was an assessor as the county administrator when Steve Witcher was here and did that. So I think that's why we focused on that. But we had a citizens group come together to help us focus our priorities. And I think that really went over well.
Thank you.
Well, I'm sure we could all spend another hour and a half talking about property values in Tompkins County and assessments. But Jay, thank you for your time and the presentation. If anyone else has questions specifically for Jay, we all know how to get a hold of him. Send him an email. He does. I will attest to what he just said. He does respond to emails at all hours of the morning and evening. So thank you for all your work on that, Jay.
Yeah, and you know, one thing I say it before, and when I'm in front of you, you know, the county puts my salary in my pocket, but I'm really your assessor as well too. Feel free to use me for whatever. If you're looking to buy property, you have a question of value, exemptions, anything, feel free to give me a yell. I'm really here for your support as well. I know some municipalities take me up on that a little bit more than others. You know, I have no problem coming out to any meeting or anything. Just give a yell. Start using us.
Great. Thanks, Jay.
Yeah, take care. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care. We have a presentation from the Tompkins County Department of Planning and Sustainability. Who is giving that presentation?
Hi, Darby Kiley
Hi,
here.
Darby.
Yeah, hi. And I'm joined by my colleague Haley Delisle as well. So we're gonna lighten things up a little bit and talk about the money we have to offer your communities. So hope to see some smiles and turn those frowns upside down. So let me share my screen, but we do have this information. We have handouts in the are included in the agenda packet. All right, everybody see that screen all right? Let me full screen, you got that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thanks, Joel. So let me just reorganize everybody on my screen. All right, so we're here to talk about 5 different programs, but we will go quickly through them. And Haley and I just cover a couple of them, so we'll be talking about some programs that are offered by others or supported by others in our department. So here's the 5 we're going to go through. So the first one, back after or for the second year in a row, is the Municipal Parks and Trails Grant Program. And so that's open to all the municipalities up to $5,000. And you can apply for multiple projects, but you can't exceed $5,000 per municipality. And so the eligible projects are different kinds of infrastructure and improvements. We definitely had some, all these examples here are things that have been supported in the past. And so, I mean, I don't think we have done too much with land acquisition or easements, but definitely could consider those moving forward and staffing. So, we've helped with some playground equipment, trash cans, everything that is on this list. And so because we don't have enough money for every single municipality, we do have to evaluate them. So we're looking for the project readiness, the project documented as a need, and then how will this increase users and the experience within the park or on the trail. Here I'll note for Bob Lynch, the paved basketball court there in Enfield, is probably hard to dribble on the grass field that you had there before. So good job getting that moving along. And so this application is open now. So it just opened last Monday on the 18th and is open for 6 weeks until April 29th. We keep it pretty simple. This, again, this year, as similar to previous years, is run through the common grant application. So there's instructions on how to use that. And so we're just looking for some basic information about the municipality and, just the timelines and documentation of the needs and the municipal support. So either a town or a municipal letter of support or a resolution from the municipality that you can apply for it. So we need to see that as well. And we'll get the notification out by mid-May. So pretty quick turnaround on that. So that's just a quick overview of the Municipal Parks and Trails. And I will hand it over to Haley for the Business Energy Advisors.
Hi, everyone. I'm Haley Delisle, the Sustainability Coordinator for Tompkins County. So the Business Energy Advisors program assists business owners and facility managers in setting energy goals to help them understand the options that are available to them. We like to get in at the earliest stage of projects. So when they're in the design or conceptualization part, and we're looking to help implement energy efficient improvements. Next slide. So why might you participate in this program? You can receive energy or advice from energy experts. So we're contracted with Tatum and ME Engineering, and you can receive up to $1,500 or $3,000 worth of services, depending on the size of your building. It's at the end of it, you get a report that really lays out the differences between different systems, the incentives that are available, some financing options, and really with the goal of helping you to reduce your energy. Next slide. So who can participate in this program? Despite the name being businesses, it's really open to any project that is undergoing construction, major renovation, or expansion. So we've had municipalities participate, nonprofits, obviously business owners, developers. So it's really open to anyone doing major renovation. The one kind of hard and fast rule is that it has to be located in Tompkins County. Next slide. So what does participation look like? The first kind of part after you fill out the application form, which is available on our website, or if you can, and I'm not sure if you can click this link, but it was definitely a part of the extra materials. Once you fill out that application and send it to me, you participate in a brainstorming meeting where we kind of talk about your project, what you're looking to have kind of dug in a little bit deeper. And the engineering firms kind of take that back, do up their report, ask any questions, and then they send that out in advance of a closeout meeting. And so you get to look at it. If you have questions, comments, or you want anything edited, there's time to do that. And then we have a closeout meeting where the report is kind of reviewed in full. And then you are prepared for the next step of your design or your building construction. And so that's the Business Energy Advisors Program. If anybody's interested, I'm the contact person for that. And then I'll kind of switch hats with next slide, and I'll talk about our Housing Affordability and Supportive Infrastructure Grant Program. So the HASIG, the HASIG program makes $20,000 of county funding available to municipalities to advance housing affordability efforts. One of the objectives of this program is to increase the number of municipalities applying for state or federal funding. The HASIG grants are small. They're up to $10,000. But can be leveraged to secure much larger state grants. Next slide. Eligible uses include writing and or administering grants to support housing affordability, improving zoning, and the development review process, conducting research, or developing infrastructure studies. The funding can also be used for actually making infrastructure improvements. These activities can be for an area or for advancing affordable housing development at a particular site. The latter might include applying for development grants, developing community-informed concept plans, issuing RFPs, planning or building on infrastructure. Next slide. Applicants can apply for up to $10,000. They have to demonstrate, the municipality has to demonstrate support for this program. So there is a 10% match that's required. And then projects that are submitted, they have to be completed within 12 months of the award. Next slide. So this is a couple of examples of projects that have been submitted in the past. The Village of Dryden and the Town of Danby were awarded $5,000 HASIG grants for which they used to write and administer a CDBG grant application. And they both were awarded $500,000. And then another example is the Town of Lansing received an award to conduct a traffic study in the Lansing Town Center area. Next slide. So like Darby's program, this is already open. It opened last week. Applications are accepted on a rolling basis through September 23rd. We're looking for great new ideas, and we encourage you to look through the county housing strategy and housing recommendations in your ideas. And you can also reach out to me for this program as well. And I'll just note, as I was talking about the deadlines for this program, I realized I didn't mention any with the Business Energy Advisors Program. There are no deadlines with that program. It's kind of always going.
Great, thanks, Haley. I'll move on to the Community Housing Development Fund. And this is a program that Megan McDonald is currently overseeing. I'm just going to go really quick because it's almost closed out, but there have been, since the program started in 2009, over $7 million have been awarded, funding 819 units, and that has leveraged this $250 million in state and other funds. So it's really powerful program that the Tompkins County, City of Ithaca, and Cornell have this fund that they created to have this permanently affordable housing. And then our department administers that money. We also have the Town of Ithaca and Town of Dryden are members as associates. So they have also paid in to the program. So you can see the guidelines, the eligible uses for purchase, construction, rehab, and then eligible applicants, nonprofits, municipalities, developers and public housing authorities. And I'll kind of skip through this one, but basically that this is geared towards households making less than 80% of the area median income. And so this shows the different project types, the maximum award amount per unit, and then the maximum total award. And the award criteria, you know, they have a few that they have to balance this against, because then there's a review committee that takes a look at the applications, and then the decisions are made based on an oversight committee that's made up of representatives of the funding partners. And as I mentioned, there's a round currently open. It closes next week, so pretty quick turnaround if you haven't considered this yet. And Megan does encourage folks to consider becoming a member, and you can reach out to her if you have any questions about that. And then just moving on to the last program that we want to talk about is the Natural Infrastructure Capital Program. This was set up a number of years ago by the county. It's capital money that keeps getting added to every year. And the purpose is to permanently protect land. So, you know, it's been used on properties such as Bell Station in the town of Lansing, and other holdings within the county. And so there's kind of a long list of eligibility for this: the willing owner, permanent protection. The title has to be held by a qualified public or nonprofit entity. And then we have some considerations in terms of its proximity to either natural feature focus areas or prime habitat, that type of thing. And then the maximum award amount is $200,000, and the cost that the county will provide is based on it being no more than 1/3 of the assessed value, which we know are going up. Sorry, Jay. All right, so that's really quick overview of all those programs. I think the main things that Haley and I really wanted to talk about were the housing affordability one and the parks and trails, since they just opened, and we know there's a lot of municipal interest in those. So I will take any questions if you have any. I know you guys don't have a lot of time.
Anybody have questions for Darby or Haley?
Hi, just very quickly. Are the slides going to be shared afterward? There was a lot of great grant information in there, but you know, it's hard to jot it all down.
Yeah, the agenda packet included the slides and so that's just right on and through the meeting portal, accessible there. And then I think the handouts are all on there, and I will put a link to if you go to this page on wait, is there a chat here? There's no chat. Never mind.
You can forward it to me, Darby.
Okay. All right. I'll send it to Taylor. There's if you go to the Tompkins County Planning Department page, it's called Community Planning. And so all the links to the programs are on that page.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Darby or Haley? And I can't see all of you on my screen, so if you do, just jump in.
Great,
all right,
thanks.
well, thank you both.
Thank you. Definitely reach out if you have questions about any of those programs.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Committee reports. We'll start with cybersecurity and municipal information technology.
So I had a recollection from the last TCOG meeting that we were going to have somebody from the county talking about the initial plan to get rid of Laserfish as a service, and then we started talking about having somebody from the county attend to discuss internet and cyber technology things so that we could kind of have a conversation. And so I see that didn't make it onto this agenda. I'm really hopeful we can do that, because each individual, as we've talked about at the town supervisor's level and also at TCOG, is that there's a lot of differentiation in needs for information technology, and that at one point there was a discussion about looking at shared services between the municipalities and the county. And so my fervent wish is that that we could have somebody come to a future TCOG meeting to kind of talk about what kind of shared services such as Laserfish, because I know Cuba Heights is taking great advantage of it in terms of, if I understand correctly, in terms of your permitting. And that's not something necessarily other municipalities are taking advantage of to the same degree. I know that the city and the town of Ithaca are doing online submissions for building permits, for instance. Again, not something all municipalities are doing, but it would be really great to hear where there's existing shared services and have a conversation about where there may be room for future collaboration. Because it's very difficult at the subcommittee level to take action because there's such difference in needs between the municipalities. You know, town of Ithaca has a IT person on staff. City of Ithaca, you probably have a lot. Down to the town of Ulysses who contracts out for services. So can I make that request that in the future we could have somebody this year?
Yeah, did I just see an email yesterday or today about Laserfish? I'm sure I did, and I'm sure I won't be able to find it right now. But yeah, I will find that email.
Awesome.
One way or another, and we will
remember the same
schedule
thing, but I remember the same thing, and I don't remember, nor could I find it either. So
yeah.
Point well made.
That's an interesting technology question of where our emails are disappearing to. I'm joking. But, I would appreciate that because I think that the committee could really use some direction about where we should put energy and effort. And it's by having a better understanding of what the county already offers and what they may be amenable to offering in the future it's a good place for us to start.
Okay. Very good. Emergency planning and preparedness. Mark, I don't know if we have anything to talk about other than the resolution later.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Yeah. I just mentioned Bob Lynch just had his hand up, I think on the previous topic.
Sorry, Bob. Missed it.
I wanted to mention to Caitlin and to the entire TCOG membership that I believe it was at our February meeting, and that was after our last TCOG meeting, but at our February town board meeting, our town clerk, Mary Cornell, was very passionate about keeping Laserfish. And I encouraged her to reach out to whomever and even attend the meeting of the Government Operations Committee of the Legislature, which is what Randy Brown, who was in attendance in February, suggested, to defend the continuation of Laserfish as a data source for Tompkins County.
Yeah, Linda.
You're muted.
I just saw, I would absolutely second that. We rely on it extensively, and it's essentially free. And I will say again that we're more than happy to share with any of you if you want us to show you how we are doing all of the permitting that we're doing with it. Again, it's and the interesting thing is the county has been really good about helping us over the years. So I second it. We really don't want to get rid of Laserfish.
So I did find that email. It was from late last week. Katrina actually forwarded it to us. So Lauren, who's the IT director for the county, was asked if he could attend this week, and he wasn't available. So he had expressed the sentiment that he welcomes and encourages each municipality to contact him directly regarding their individual Laserfish and shared services needs. But I think we will still try to get him to come back and talk to us as a group. I think that would be helpful.
Gordon?
Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, sir.
After a previous meeting, when this got mentioned, I contacted Lauren, our IT director for the county, and I'm gonna read a little section of the email he sent back to me. Cayuga Heights expressed uncertainty about why any municipality would invest in a vendor-provided permit solution when the county offers a free option. There are costs associated with Laserfeature, such as licensing, storage, development, disaster recovery, and cybersecurity measures. This was mistakenly interpreted as the county phasing out Laserfeature from municipalities, which is not the case. So it sounds like there was a little bit of misunderstanding that started this conversation. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have the conversation, but I just wanted to read that.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
Oh.
We will see if we can get Lauren to come and speak with this group. Anything from the Energy Committee?
I'll keep this brief. There was a meeting last week. It was just informational. I actually wasn't there. Some of you may have been there. So I know that there were updates from the Clean Energy Communities and the Climate Smart Communities programs. I know that Gay Nicholson was there from Sustainable Finger Lakes, talking about a new pilot program for converting gas heating systems and lower income rentals. So it sounds like, some good information was shared. And I'm not sure what our next step will be, but we'll probably have another meeting in 3 or 4 months. So if anyone was at the meeting and wants to chime in, but I know that there was a gathering last Thursday and that it was informational.
Great. Thanks, Rod. Transportation Committee. Bob, I know you had sent your summary. Thank you for that. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I'll just add to summarizing for people who are watching this meeting who might not be members of TCOG. Couple points to be made. The first one's very positive, that TCAT now has an acting general manager. His name is Matthew Rosenblum Jones, and he was hired in January for another position at TCAT in terms of he was in charge of their systems development manager to be responsible for planning TCAT's service system-wide. They are still looking for the permanent person to fill that position, but effective March 1st, Matthew Rosenblum Jones took over as the acting GM of TCAT. I guess trial by fire, perhaps, because they had a problem. And this is a problem, a challenge that they're still working on. And I'm going to quote the exact statement that was made by their TCAT's Director of Communications and Marketing. And that is, quote, on Wednesday evening, March 13th, staff noticed a serious issue affecting the frame on one of the Proterra electric buses. Acting General Manager Rosenblum Jones made the immediate decision to remove all 7 Proterra buses from service until further notice. We do not yet know if this is a structural issue that may cause similar problems with the other 6 buses, but safety is paramount, close quote. They've been having problems at TCAT with the electric buses. They have 7 of them in their fleet. Right now, all are grounded because of the situation I just described. But even until then, there was a ridership advisory committee meeting on the 11th of March. And at that point, only 2 of the 7 were in service. One of them was having real battery problems, and they've had a plethora of problems with those buses. They're working on them, but right now, all 7 are out of service.
Okay. There was and I apologize for not writing down who brought this up. There was a desire to discuss CHIPS funding.
Oh, the CHIPS matter?
Yes.
Yes. The Enfield Town Board back in the 13th of March passed a resolution endorsing the continuation and the continued full funding of the CHIPS program for highway maintenance. So a little bit of background here. We learned in February from some state legislators that Governor Hochul's executive budget proposed a $60 million cut in the funding for the CHIPS program. And a number of those senators were very insistent that that funding cut should be restored. As I understand it from reading a legislative summary by Senator Leah Webb, that at least the Senate's one House version of this budget that is going into conference calls for restoration of that CHIPS money. But before that information came out, we in Enfield passed a resolution in support of restoration of that $60 million and some bolstering of the overall base funding for CHIPS. So important for our towns. A hefty percentage of our road construction and maintenance expenses in Enfield is borne by CHIPS and its related state programs. And I certainly hope they do not get reduced. And I would encourage other town boards and village boards to keep close tabs on this. And if they felt resolutions were necessary on their part, to advance them.
Great, thanks, Bob. Jason, did you want to take the opportunity to talk about the broadband?
So quickly. So last night, Anna Kellis got in touch with me and Dan Lamb about there was a provisions like kind of put into the Assembly One House budget that would restrict any of the federal monies that are being distributed by Connect All to only addresses that are unserved, which would mean that projects like ours and some others are across the state, and potentially, I think even potentially what the county wants to do, even with hiring, a contractor to cover, many of the other towns. It would pretty much make those projects unviable in some ways, because if you had to pass by already served addresses by Charter Spectrum, you wouldn't receive funding for that portion of it. It was not in the Senate One House budget, and it wasn't in the governor's budget. So it's, they're, unless something changes, because I just got off the phone with Harris Weiss, who's the governor's, I guess liaison for Southern Tier. They're aware of this thing. They're going to look out for it to make sure that something can be done if it does get out of, somehow make it into the final, I guess the reconciled budget. But he doesn't think there's much of a chance of that happening at the moment. But Anna is working in the Assembly to get it taken out of their One House version anyhow. So she'll let us know if she needs us to do anything at this point. But I know she has some backing from folks out in Western New York to get rid of it from the Assembly One House budget. And our consultant, Hunt, EAS, gave her information about the number of the municipalities who are currently working on broadband projects, including some up north, which is where it seems like this provision originated. It was an Assembly person from the Saratoga area who pushed for this, and they may just not be aware of all the options that are out there to get service in rural areas. So it's they're trying to turn it into an upstate downstate thing when it's not really the case.
Or an urban rural thing. I think she isn't aware that models like ours exist. And so we don't really have an advocacy like others do in Albany, because we're kind of trying to break the barrier of municipally owned internet, but others are interested in doing what we're doing, like the town of Caroline. And so we're just hoping to get through on this Assemblywoman Warner that this would be really harmful if it stayed in the bill. So Anna's got to go toe to toe with this person and work on building a coalition to reason why it shouldn't be this way in the bill, the budget bill. And then, like Jason said, the Senate isn't acting on this. There's no senator that is being an advocate for this policy. But it could cut us out. The bottom line is it could cut us out of the $600 million that's coming in from the federal government through the state government. And that's not what the feds had in mind when they put out the funding notice to the states about this. So it's explicit that they want this money going to municipally owned and operated internet as well as other providers. So this is a real quirk. And unfortunately, it's happening in a lot of states where these private ISPs are manipulating the process at the state level, regardless of what the federal government said.
So is there anything either of you are asking for TCOG to do other than just stay tuned and be aware at this point?
Yeah, stay tuned and be aware, because if we get the word from Anna that we need to take action, I'll let everybody know by email.
Yeah.
Okay, Dan Klein, you had something broadband related?
Yes, so Lisa Holmes mentioned that you all got an email today, but I just want to expand on it a little bit because it is now public as of today. The agenda for the Housing and Economic Development Committee just came out today, and in it contains more information about the county's broadband proposal. That meeting is next Wednesday. You're welcome to attend, and you can hear a lot more detail. But if you want a few written things, you can look in that agenda, which is now on our website. I also have some paper copies here, and I'm going to just take 20 seconds to tell you some of the things that are in. I hope you think they're cool. So the proposal would be to reach every unserved address in Tompkins County, with the exceptions of the towns of Dryden and towns of Caroline. We are leaving those out so that they can work on their municipal broadband project without competition from anybody else, from private ISPs. The private ISP that was chosen to do this is Point Broadband. They are going to pay at least a quarter of the cost of the whole project. The whole project is estimated to cost $7.5 million. And then the final piece of this is that the county is also going to be asked to put up $100,000 up front to do some engineering work that will pave the way to make this application even more attractive. So that's everything in a nutshell.
Anybody have any questions for Dan?
So,
yeah, Dan.
We appreciate this, and it's mostly what we had asked for on behalf of the town of Dryden and town of Caroline, that we be kind of held harmless or have a cutout in this effort, and we really respect what the county's trying to do. I guess what we would ask is when we go to apply for funding, can we expect a robust endorsement of our projects from the county, just so any funding entity knows that we're not competing with each other?
Yes, so we've already written in a letter of endorsement for you for the municipal program that you've already just sent in the grant for.
Yeah.
And yeah, of course, we're on your side and we want to see you succeed. We'll help.
But we understand now that whatever county allocation is put into this, we're not going to receive any of it. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is what you asked for, and there actually is no county allocation with the exception of the $100,000 engineering pre-study. We're hoping, it's not sure yet, we're hoping that the rest of the expenditures in the county will be zero.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Welcome.
Other questions or comments for Dan? Yeah, go, Michael.
Yeah, I just after having had extensive experience with Point Broadband, I'd be happy to share any of those experiences with anybody who's interested. And there are a few things that I would recommend, such as securing a legitimate way of contacting Point Broadband when a customer is out of service. That's one of the major issues we've run into dealing with them. Otherwise, they've gotten the work done. But there are a few wrinkles that I'd be willing to help with as you move through this process.
Thank you, Mike. I'll be in touch.
All right.
Yeah, Caitlin.
Could I just ask a clarification on the project? So it's estimated at 7.5 million and Point Broadband is paying a quarter of that. And the county's not putting in more than for the engineering study. Where's the other money coming from?
From the federal and state broadband money.
Okay, thank you.
Not guaranteed, but we
Right.
have reasons to believe that we're in a very good situation.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions, broadband related? Okay, Dan Lamb made it. We put it to the end of the agenda for you, Dan. We have a resolution for this body to consider. This was written and came out of the Emergency Planning and Preparedness Committee. I'm hoping everyone has had a chance to read it, or maybe I'll ask, has anyone not had a chance to read it? Because if everyone's read it, then that will save me having to read it out loud anyway. That's good. So this resolution, in a nutshell, the concept for the Tompkins County RMR program, and Mark, jump in anytime. The very concept of the county RMR program came out of our particular TCOG subcommittee, came through TCOG and was supported by TCOG, and now we are putting into language what was the original stated intent of that program. We're reiterating the fact that we believe that this should be a county-funded program. We believe that, like the Sheriff's Department, the need for a county-run, county-wide service to bolster the other existing agencies is what is called for. And we appreciate the county legislature wanting to be as judicious with their dollar to spend as every other municipal body tries to be. However, the notion of cost sharing is not something that's even has never even been conceptually discussed when talking about something like the Sheriff's Department, and so we don't think it should apply to something like this. And so that is the resolution before us to consider today. We can depart from. We've never really followed Robert's Rules of Order, so we can discuss it now. Or if someone would like to move it and we can discuss it more formally that way, I'm fine either way. Dan, Mark, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
I moved it so we could talk about it. How about that?
All right, would someone like to then move this resolution that everyone has read on the countywide emergency response service?
I just did. Yeah.
Joel moved. Do we have a second?
Second.
Bob with a second. Great. Comments, questions, and discussion. Yeah, Dan.
Yeah, I just want everyone to take this time to ask whatever questions you may have about this, because we really want 100% robust support of this. We've all got to be on board because this is a project that wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for TCOG. And this is something we developed as a subcommittee, but we certainly ran it by all of you throughout the process. And, you know, this could really determine the success or failure of the initiative in our minds. I think trying to go into a cost sharing process would send us down a rabbit hole that the program just could not get out of.
Yeah, Bob.
Yes, just wanted to let people know that the Enfield Town Board on the 13th of March endorsed Mayor Hart's recommendation and authorized our supervisor to sign his letter. So we are on record. I don't know if any other towns, municipalities have joined in endorsing this with their own resolutions.
Any other comments or questions regarding this?
Yes. Dan Klein?
Yeah, Dan.
So it's clear to me this will pass, so I'm not going to try to change your mind, but I can't let this moment go without pointing some things out. It's fine, you know, we all want the program to go, it will go, so that's the good news. The cost sharing was going to distribute the costs a little more equitably among the people who aren't already paying for as much for emergency medical services. This, of course, will eliminate that equity issue. And we did some calculations. Lisa sent you an email a few weeks ago. I did my own version of it. And, you know, Town of Ulysses, the average house in Ulysses is going to pay $2 more than they would have under the other method. In other words, this is just a form of shifting the taxes back around again. And some of the towns are going to pay more. And it turns out that some of the towns are going to pay more. In fact, most of them are the ones that are already paying a lot for emergency medical services. So, you know, your budgets are going to look a little better and the Tompkins County's budget is going to look a little worse. That's what this does by eliminating the cost sharing. Having said that, we're going to have a good program. It is still scheduled to start next week. And I can tell you that there were 34 applicants for the EMT positions. So it's got, you know, I'm all enthusiastic that it's going to be a success. I'm a little disappointed that the cost sharing didn't go through, and you, like I said, I just couldn't help taking this moment to point out that really, by doing this, the towns are hiding some of the costs from your constituents.
Yeah, Bob or Mark.
I'll let Mark.
Take a pick.
Okay, so, yeah, I'd just like to speak to that. And first of all, I appreciate the support, and I feel like everybody is working in good faith to do this in a fair way to our residents, to our taxpayers, and the beneficiaries. I really do think the example of the sheriff's office and how we fund that is really spot on. And different municipalities, some of us don't have police departments. Some of us have higher crime rates than others, and so on. But I guess I'm just trying to highlight that this isn't going to replace transport agencies. It's not going to replace the existing emergency medical response agencies. It's going to supplement them, and it's going to be a new service that addresses this thing that we've all recognized for so long, and that is, you know, the loss of volunteers and the difficulties of providing emergency medical first response. So, I appreciate I think everybody's working in good faith to do this fairly. I think trying to designate how each municipality will benefit or differs it won't help us in the end. It'll hurt us. It'll create a vulnerability of the program, and ultimately, I think this is going to support every municipality and their response agencies, and so I think that's important to recognize.
Yeah, Bob.
Yes, I want to second what Mark said, and I also want to commend Dan Klein for his compromise proposal for cost sharing. It's good, and I haven't rejected it outright because I think it's a good compromise if everybody goes along with it. And I think that was a concern of our Enfield Town Board and the concern of others who I've talked to, and I was in attendance on the 29th of February at that intermunicipal meeting. And there was some hesitancy by the largest municipal participant in this cost sharing in its leadership to going along with it for reasons I won't get into. But you see, if somebody backs out and another one backs out and a third one backs out, that's going to lead to a lot of animosity and rivalry among the municipalities that remain. And I think that was Mayor Hart's central argument, that if everybody goes along with the cost sharing plan, it works out well. If somebody backs out, it could really bring problems, not just financial problems, but problems of ill will. And so I think that's what motivated our town's support for what Mayor Hart has come up with. And we're willing to talk, but I think we have to put our words into the record. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll echo that too. No, I appreciate, Dan, your efforts on this, and from our conversation a couple of months ago, as cost sharing models go, this one is I think quite elegant. However, I'm not actually looking at this, and speaking just for myself and from the village of Trumansburg's perspective, I'm not looking at this really in the short term. I'm really trying to look at this from the perspective of how do we bulletproof this program for the long term? Because I've been out in the weeds on EMS for a long time, and I see trends, and I have probably less optimistic than I wish they were opinions of where EMS will be in 10 years. And I think to have the county embrace the role of the role and responsibility of operating this program with the eye towards supporting and bolstering the existing agencies, I think that's really important. I think that's needed. And I think having the county approach it from that perspective and understanding how this system of emergency response is not only an intertwined network, but is not a local rescue matter. It's a regional provision of healthcare issue. I think is really important, and having the county fully fund it as a county program, I think does that better than any type of attempt to share costs, other than on a countywide per capita basis. Any other comments from anyone else? Yeah, Caitlin.
We often talk about in stormwater that water doesn't respect municipal boundaries. Well, in the EMS world, health emergencies don't respect municipal boundaries as well. So I would be very clear, since this is a public meeting, that the town of Ulysses, and I do appreciate you calling us out in terms of the cost that would be, and I do support moving to a model where the cost is borne and if by the county, and that ultimately falls on our property owners. It's not certainly from the town of Ulysses. It is not an effort to duck costs or to avoid costs or keep, quite frankly, $5,000 out of my budget. That's all the costs that would have been in the cost sharing to the town of Ulysses. Quite differently, it's that recognition that, and this is what I will tell property owners if they, when they learn about this, if they do have concerns about paying more than their fair share, I will say that our ambulance system that we pay into with the village of Trumansburg will be healthier because our neighbors are going to be healthier, because they're going to have services coming to them in Enfield that are currently not available. And so that means our ambulance service won't necessarily have to travel so far from our ambulance district in order to provide care. We're still there if they need it as backup, but it's not necessarily going to be the first line. And I think my residents will understand that at $2 per household per year, that's if the call time can be reduced 15, 20 seconds, couple of minutes, that we all benefit by having more of these services. I can't more than second what has already been said about how this is very, very similar to the sheriff's department. We all benefit by having healthy law enforcement. We will all benefit by having healthier EMS services countywide.
Other comments or questions?
Yeah, and forgive me, this is my first meeting with you guys, but I have a lot to ask about today. I can appreciate this conversation and that we're actually, that what we're trying to put together today. My quick question is, we're talking a lot about cost sharing, but my understanding of EMS providers, and for instance, banks in particular, is they can also generate revenue through third-party insurance billing. Is that, I'm not familiar with the type of service we're exactly trying to start here. Are we providing a service that's going to be able to generate revenue as well?
Not in this current format. So the county program as currently constructed and conceived of, I think moving forward, employs only EMTs, no paramedics, and it is a non-transporting agency. So without paramedics, you cannot bill, and without transport, technically you can bill for certain services without a transport, but most ambulance companies, including the municipal ones, or Dryden Ambulance, Trumansburg EMS, I'm not 100% sure about Dryden, but I know here in Trumansburg, we only bill for transports. So this will not be a billing agency because of those two reasons.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? Comments?
So I did have a question. Dan Klein, you had mentioned that a decision's pending on this, or has it already been made by the county?
I'm sorry, decision on what?
What's that?
Could you repeat that, Dan? Could you repeat that?
I was wondering, maybe I misheard you, but I thought you said a decision's been made on this, or where are we in the decision implementation stage for this?
Yeah, no, Dan,
cost sharing.
I was saying that I could sense that this group was going to have made a decision to pass this resolution. That's what I meant.
Great. And did we win you?
No, you did not win me, but it's all good. This is a great program. We're all happy to see it going forward. And the county will pay for it.
The county will pay for it with state money for the most part. That
only year one. Only year one. From then on, it's 100% local, 100% county now.
Right. Well, the bulk of the expenses are year one in standing it up and getting the vehicles.
It's $500,000 a year going forward.
Other comments or questions?
I'd like to speak a little bit to, I don't really understand what the advantage of cost sharing would be. I mean, maybe Dan could speak to that, because you mentioned quote unquote skin in the game. Sharing in the cost, I don't see how we would be in any kind of position to apply pressure or otherwise, try to restrain the costs. What we, as separate municipalities could do that would in any way create a benefit of the cost sharing model.
Well, really briefly, there were two major reasons why I was pushing for cost sharing. The benefit to you is that you would have some control over the system. You'd have some say, just like when broadband first came up, many of the towns had asked, can we have a say in what happens, but can you, the county, pay for it? And so no, if we're going to pay for it, then it's going to be our program. So we were offering a stake in the game here, so you have some decision-making ability. And now that won't happen. It's going to be a county program. But the other main reason I was pushing for cost sharing was equity purposes. Town of Danby isn't really putting tax money into emergency medical services. The town of Ulysses, town of Dryden, town of Groton are. So I was trying to get you, the town of Danby, to pay a little extra into the system and Ulysses a little less. But now that's going to be a county tax. That whole system would not, that whole benefit would not happen.
I beg to differ on the EMS, because the fire departments do a pretty good job of covering. And there's a difference between Danby and West Danby in that regard, but which gets got that whole equity thing, that's been bandied about is a can of worms.
Other comments or questions? Yeah, Dan, man.
I would just say to that last comment, Dan, what if they don't? Because you're right, the town of Dryden is a donor town to other municipalities in terms of the service we pay for. But what if our neighbors don't enter into the cost sharing? Then we're in the same place we are now. And that's, you know, at its core, that's why I'm you know, kind of concerned about this cost sharing model, because we get no assurance that it's going to impact the current problem, not just for our taxpayers subsidizing other towns, but residents not getting the service they need within the time they need. If some of these municipalities do not enter the cost sharing, and those are all of, you know, those are county residents.
Well, again, briefly, there's never a question of denying service to a town that wasn't going to participate. You know, all the towns will get service. I can't answer the other hypothetical. What I would ask you to do, and again, I think we should probably end the conversation, just vote, because I can see what's going to happen. But my answer would have been, if you supported cost sharing, turn to your neighbor and convince them, help me convince them.
It doesn't work that way. I mean, we can't make them do what their voters don't want them to do. If that were the case, the problem would already be solved. It wouldn't be a problem.
Other comments or questions on the resolution on the floor? This is one, it feels like one of those speak now or forever hold your peace moments, but no, I do appreciate everyone's input, and appreciate, again, Dan Klein, appreciate your efforts on all of this. And you know, looking back through the telescope from the other end and seeing where EMS was in the 80s and 90s and where it is today, it's a monumental step for the county to even be recognizing the importance of its role in this service. And so thank you for all of that. Yeah, Mike.
I guess I'd like to join in and say the fact that I really think it should be a sheriff, similar to the sheriff department. I think that's the best way, because it probably will have to grow at some time, and it's better for the sheriff, or not the sheriffs, but the county, to take control of it. And the cost effect sounds good, but I think it's better that everybody would maybe get a little more in their money contributed from their county taxes. But I think it's a universal thing, as somebody else was saying. You know, it flows across everybody's boundary. If the places that have the ambulance have to go into places where they could be done with an EMT, then they're not available to service elsewhere, or they get slow delivery there for a maybe more critical one, but they're already assigned to something. So I think it should really be a county. So that's just my thought.
Thanks, Mike. Anyone else?
I'll just add that I think it's really important that we have a unanimous vote here. So if there's anyone with any concerns, please bring them up right now. Great.
Okay. Then we have a motion and a second to adopt this resolution as presented on the floor. I am going to call for a vote. All in favor of approving this resolution as presented, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Are there any opposed?
I need Michael Allinger to turn his camera on or verbally vote, please.
Aye.
Thank you.
And I believe none opposed. Are there any abstentions? Terrific. Well, thank you, everybody. Do we have any other than Laserfish? Do we have anything specific we want to add to our next meeting agenda? I'm sure we'll find something between now and then.
Yeah.
I can mention that I'm hoping that we can hear from the the Food Policy Council, which I expressed some interest a while back, but then didn't fit on the agenda before. But I'm hoping Don Barber will come to address the questions of what we can do to better support agriculture.
Sounds good. Anything else for next time? If not, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
You don't need that. You can just adjourn.
We can just all sign off and then we'll be adjourned, right?
As long as there's no
Well, thanks.
opposition.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Thanks,
Good night.
everybody.
Thank you. Hmm.